Mickey Mouse, to me, is a symbol of independence. He was a means to an end. He popped out of my mind onto a drawing pad 20 years ago on a train ride from Manhattan to Hollywood at a time when the business fortunes of my brother Roy and myself were at lowest ebb and disaster seemed right around the corner. Born of necessity, the little fellow literally freed us of immediate worry, provided the means for expanding our organization to its present dimensions and for extending the cartoon animation toward new entertainment levels. Mickey enabled me to go ahead and do the things I had in mind and the things I foresaw as a natural trend of film fantasy. He spelled production liberation for us. His first actual screen appearance was at the Old Colony Theater in New York in Steamboat Willie, with its sound effects and cautious speech. His current appearance is in our new musical fantasy feature in Technicolor, combining living and animated action, fun and fancy-free. In between, he has appeared in more pictures than any flesh and blood star. He was the first cartoon character to stress personality and to be constantly kept in character. I thought of him from the first as a distinct individual, not just a cartoon type or symbol going through comedy routines. I kept him away from stock symbols and situations. We exposed him in close-ups. Instead of speeding the cartoons, as was then the fashion, we were not afraid to slow down the tempo and let Mickey emote. We allowed audiences to get acquainted with him, to recognize him as a personage, motivated by character instead of situations. Quite consciously, I had been preparing Mickey and his screen pals for the advent of sound. I'd made quite a few silent pictures prior to Steamboat Willie. It may seem a curious thing that even in those early films, with their explanatory balloons, I had thought of them in terms of sound and speech and dreamed of the day when the voice would be synchronized with the silent action. But I felt sure it was coming. Our tempo and rhythm and general animation technique were already being adjusted so that sound could fit in readily when it came. As early as 1923, I was doing song films. I seldom thought of our silent product without some musical complement. I used to talk to the organist in the theater on arrangements before a film was shown. I even had a gadget which ensured a crude kind of synchronization between the organ music and the picture action. In 1925, I had an animated cat in one of our silents direct the orchestra in the pit from the screen. While this was all preliminary to sound in films, it was preparatory background and equipment for that first Mickey Mouse talker and the subsequent swift evolvement of sound. Of course, sound had a very considerable effect on our treatment of Mickey Mouse. It gave his character a new dimension. It rounded him into complete life-likeness, and it carried us into a new phase of his development. Mickey had reached the stage where we had to be very careful about what we permitted him to do. He'd become a hero in the eyes of his audiences, especially the youngsters. Mickey could do no wrong. I could never attribute any meanness or callous traits to him. We kept him lovable, although ludicrous in his blundering heroics. And that's the way he's remained, despite any outside influences. He's grown into a consistent, predictable character to whom we could assign only the kind of role and antic which were correct for his reputation. Naturally, I'm pleased with his continued popularity here and abroad, with the esteem he has won as an entertainment name among youngsters and grown-ups, with the honors he's brought our studio, with the high compliment bestowed when his name was the password for the invasion of France, and with his selection for insignia by scores of fighting units during the war years. These are tributes beyond all words of appreciation. In a business way, as I've indicated, Mickey meant almost incalculable things to my brother Roy and to me as we went through our ups and downs toward founding our present organization with its Burbank studio, its extensive personnel, and its continuous picture schedules. At this turning point in our career, already referred to, I needed just such a fresh cartoon personality to sell a projected series of short subjects, which, after failing to get over my ideas with another cartoon venture in New York, I proposed a new series. I felt I had to rely on a sustained character appeal rather than on the merit of each separate issue. Mickey fitted the need exactly. He brought in the money which saved the day. He paved the way for our more elaborate screen ventures. He enabled us to explore our medium and to evolve the technical advances which were to appear in our first feature-length animation fantasy, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and successively in other features like Bambi, Dumbo, Pinocchio, Fantasia, The Three Caballeros, Saludos Amigos, Victory Through Air Power, Make Mine Music, Song of the South, and so up to our latest and current production, Fun and Fancy Free. In his immediate and continuously successful appeal to all kinds of audiences, Mickey first subsidized our first Silly Symphony series. From there, he sustained other ventures, plugging along as our bread and butter hero. He was a studio prodigy and pet, and we treated him accordingly. In due time, we gave Mickey that contrasting, temperamental sidekick, Donald Duck. Then Pluto, the naive, credulous hound, came along. We used to play these three together in the same picture. Later, we divided them into separate vehicles, Mickey, Donald, and Pluto. These meant fewer pictures for each, and of course Mickey appeared less often. But you'll see him again in his most hair-raising adventure in Mickey and the Beanstalk, an escapade from Fun and Fancy Free. Prior to this, his top performance was in Fantasia as a sorcerer's apprentice. In the early days, I did the voice of most of our characters. It wasn't financially feasible to hire people for such assignments. In Steamboat Willie, in addition to speaking for Mickey, I also supplied a few sound effects for Minnie, his girlfriend, and for the parrot. For Mickey's first picture, I had planned to go all out on sound, and those plans came very near spelling a major disaster for us. To launch our picture impressively, I had hired a full New York orchestra with a famous director to do the recording. The musicians were to cost $10 an hour. I thought 15 men would be enough, but the director insisted on having 30 men. Because I was awed by him, I was finally persuaded to take the 30. The upshot was that I had to borrow on my automobile, and Roy and I had to mortgage our homes as well to cover the cost of that first synchronization for Steamboat Willie. And when it was finished, the picture wouldn't synchronize with the sound, and we had to do it all over after the orchestra leader had reluctantly consented to follow the mechanics that we had prepared at the studio. What I wanted most of all I didn't get, a bull fiddle for the bass. The recording room was so small that the orchestra could hardly be jammed into it. The bull fiddle blasted so loud it ruined the other sound and kept blowing out all of the recording lamps. A sad thing, I thought at the time, to launch our Mickey without benefit of bull fiddle in so precarious a world of new possibilities and increased competition. But he survived and thrived and set the pace in his entertainment field. The cost of his first vehicles ranged from the bare $1,200 for Steamboat Willie to 7 figures for Fun and Fancy Free, in which he shares prominence with Donald, Goofy, Jiminy Cricket, and several new cartoon creations, and with Edgar Bergen and his radio pals Charlie McCarthy, Mortimer Snurd, and also Dinah Shore and our own little starlet, Luana Patton. I often find myself surprised at what has been said about our redoubtable little Mickey, who was never really a mouse, nor yet wholly a man, although always recognizably human, I hope. Psychoanalysis have probed him, wise men of critical inclination have pondered him, columnists have kidded him, admirers have suited him in extravagant terms. The League of Nations gave him a special medal as a symbol of international goodwill. Hitler was infuriated by him and thunderingly forbade his people to wear the then popular Mickey Mouse lapel button in place of the swastika. The little fellow's grin was too infectious for Nazism. But all we ever intended for him and expected of him was that he should continue to make people everywhere chuckle with him and at him. We didn't burden him with any social symbolism. We made him no mouthpiece for frustrations or harsh satire. Mickey was simply a little personality assigned to the purposes of laughter. And it is certainly gratifying that the public, which first welcomed him 2 decades ago, as well as their children, have not permitted us, even if we had wished so to do, to change him in any manner or degree other than a few minor revisions of his physical appearance. In a sense, he was never young. In the same sense, he never grows old in our eyes. All we can do is give him things to overcome in his own rather stubborn way in his cartoon universe. There's much nostalgia for me in these reflections. The life and ventures of Mickey Mouse have been closely bound up with my own personal and professional life. It is understandable that I should have sentimental attachment for the little personage who played so big a part in the course of Disney productions and has been so happily accepted as an amusing friend wherever films are shown around the world. He still speaks for me, and I still speak for him. Mickey, I think on this occasion you should say something to all our friends who are listening around the world.
Okay. Well, happy birthday, everybody.
No, Mickey, you don't understand. It's your birthday. This is your 20th birthday.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'll be seeing you.